What's up, guitar sexies? Welcome back. I figure we could do like a part 3 of this interval stuff with an actual practical example now. Now that I've basically covered the basics. Yeah, I might have hit the bong a little bit too hard this morning, but you know what? Train wrecks happen all the time, and there's another one about to happen right now. Get ready. Strap in. So essentially, if I had just done what I did there, the performance part, to a large degree without any sort of real explanation, people would be just lost. But you can see I tried to. It was weird because I had to constrain myself to just the simpler ideas, which I'm not really used to. But still, it's no excuse. It just means I have to practice more of the simple stuff so I get more proficient at that instead of getting obsessed with the complicated stuff. Remember that. It's across the board perfection, not just in one particular area. So the thing is now you can kind of see these ideas put into place as far as the melody is concerned. I'm not just doing some crazy shred idea, which in my opinion is just equally as important as being able to do the not shred, which is melody, okay? Shred is like the intermediary thing that you use to essentially, you know, whatever, shock the listener a little bit, you know, to be like, oh yeah, check this out. And then you're you know, they'll be like, oh wow, okay, paying attention more. But bottom line is that too much shred, bad. And being too boring, also equally bad. And playing too linear, bad, right? Playing too much of anything in one particular vein, too many sweeps, bad. Okay, there has to be a combination of different techniques amalgamated together, plus inside and outside playing, right? You can hear I used it very subtly, but it was still there when I did this cool. Right, which is essentially a version of the melodic minor. So my point being here is that, you know, all of those elements end up being there. And that's what makes a great solo. It's not just perfect technique and great note selection and all the rest of stuff and control. It's the whole package. It's varying everything, you know, it's having different approaches. It's landing on the right notes at the right time when the chords are changing to really emphasize that melody and whatnot. There's a whole bunch of little micromanagement music skills that go on behind the scenes that make you successful as a soloist, as an improviser. And without those, you're just going to consistently hit the wall. You'll be able to improvise sort of mechanically in like a robot kind of situation, spitting back out the information, but that lacks the emotion necessary to really sell it. And that's what these lessons are trying to, you know, expose, is this extra stuff that you have going on in the background when you're thinking like a musician. And I guarantee you every guy on the internet and all the big musicians will tell you the exact same thing. There are 4 basic tenets. Number 1, find your own voice on the instrument. Number 2, practice diligently and consistently. Number 3, diversify your practice sessions. And number 4, make sure that you incorporate music theory into your everyday practice regime. So you start to take these abstract pieces of information and lump them together with something real. Like an E-type chord at the first degree of a major scale, which in this case would be B flat. I'd move here to the 6th fret and I'd play that configuration, right? So there's an abstract concept that you would see, and then there's something where you would actually move to the instrument and make the connection there. Maybe I'd be like making a 9, you know? So on and so forth. And that's where that stuff starts to come in and be very important, right? But as far as the practicing of these ideas, okay, the first one obviously is understanding this idea of using these techniques as a way to create melody. Yeah, you could sit there and sweep. And it sounds great, right? But can you sweep and turn it into a melody? Now that's a whole nother ball game. Like the yin to the yang. One is just like this vehicle that you use to be like, whoosh, 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 pay attention to my killer guitar playing. But the other one is the more subtle sort of like sneak attack, right? So that one is actually more effective, especially when you set up the shred with something like that. So always be thinking about creating a melody and being musical, right? Think about all the memorable oh, that's a tough one. Memorable melodies that are out there that you can just think of off the top of your head and then start to make that the central focus of when you're practicing, right? So when I came up with the idea, I knew that this whole song here was in the key of A minor, because I just sort of jammed through this A minor pentatonic scale. And I was like, there it is, boom, right? So that tells me it's C major. Right, so those two pieces of information solved. That basically sets out the whole table. I know this is going to be the Aeolian position, right? This is going to be the Locrian. And then I'm moving up to the major, right? Dorian, minor, Phrygian, minor, major. For the 4th degree here at F, right? This dominant 7 for the 5th degree, and then I'm at the 6th degree. So that's how all those pieces of information start to come in handy right away, because you're like, okay, here I am at this scale. And I use the pentatonic because honestly, it's just the one that's the easiest to recognize of all the scale types. There's no ambiguity about it. When it sits in the pocket, you're like, there it is. It just has this sound. It just locks in. So you do you, but that's my preference. Right? So once you kind of get all of those pieces factored in, you're like, okay, now I know this is an arpeggio. What's that one? Diminish, right? For the 7th degree, up a half step to the major. A whole step to the 2nd degree, and then a whole step for the 3rd degree. Half step 4. Nails it. And notice I went outside the key there. I swapped out Mixolydian to play the major, and then everything in relation to that. But notice it's barely noticeable, because those two keys are so closely related. In a major scale, I have no sharps or flats, but in Mixolydian, I just have the 7th degree lowered, right? The Mixolydian mode. So that's what gives me the dominant 7 sound. So again, all of those pieces of information, incredibly important that you practice memorizing them, instantaneously bringing up that information when you need it. Here you are, you're like, this is the minor key. Maybe you're going to jump up here and be like, this is D minor. You're going to use this minor 3rd trick to get to the major, which is going to be the 2nd note of the minor pentatonic scale, which is going to tell you this is F major. So F major's relative minor is D minor. Again, little hacks like that going to be invaluable as far as the intervals are concerned. We've looked at them. Right, climbing up. I need to adjust the 4th when I'm doing 4ths. In the 5ths. I should have played that one, sorry, but you get my point right there. In the 7th degree, I have to do the augmentation. With the 7ths, I looked at it starting here. It's 3 minors in a row. So I'll let you figure that one out. And I noticed something, actually, this is a great little tip. When I was doing those more crazy interval scales like seconds, I started doing them with music, and I was like, okay, I can hear those steps a lot more clearly when it's done to a simple backing track. And if you want to go total like caveman style, which is great, in some cases, just dial it right back 1 chord, a vamp. So throw on like G major or anything, I don't care what it is, and then dig into it. And it might be cool to be like, okay, what does it sound like when it starts off with E Lydian? And then try to orient your sequence with respect to that. And again, see, do you really understand this information? Can you start on the Lydian interval and then start going through the sequence, which would be 4, and then 5, and then be 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So that is a real world test of, can you actually do some real stuff on the guitar without actually being like, here, play this or whatever. Here's this video. Here's this exercise. Can you come up with your own exercises? Because those exercises that you come up with now that you're going to perfect and you're going to keep playing over the long haul are going to become the most insane licks you have in your arsenal 10 years down the road. That's how that works. A lot of the stuff that I do, the super shreddy stuff, it started off with just the basic ones that you guys were doing too. So keep that in mind. It's just I kept doing certain things my way, how I thought they sounded cool or whatever. And it just became my own particular style. And again, that gets back to the main tenets. Find your own voice on the instrument. Never copy somebody else. Learn from their technique. Understand how they're applying it to a major scale, minor scale, or whatever it is. But do not copy directly. If they're saying alternate pick some stuff, then just do your own version of alternate picking, okay, instead of just copying. So, getting to the thing, obviously, after I figured out it was A minor, I wanted to start off with the interval structure, right, which is the most important part here, right? So I'm gonna... This was my target note. And I was like, just starting off with that sounds boring. So I was like, I did that. What is that? A minor triad, right? Oh my God, I know. From what? E minor there. Caged chord, right? There's E major. And I have to lower the third. That's 1, 5, 1, 3. Dropping the third there. I get the minor, right? And I'm just taking this little triad and I'm now converting it into an interval. Then I'm going to do, again, I mean, just using this interval here. What interval is that? Minor third, right? Fourth, augmented fourth, fifth, right? And don't forget to go through those steps. They're going to be important so you can train your ear to hear each one of those steps, right? Right, so eventually you can start to expand all over the fretboard, but of course it starts off with just doing the simple ones where you're doing it up. And notice I'm adding the slide there, of course. Then another slide down here. Again, a series of thirds here. That was Lydian. Where I end up in this minor pentatonic, which is just above it here. Here's Lydian again. And here's the pentatonic. And those two flavors go great together, right? So that's why I'm using it. I can basically... Which is why I use them, but instead of doing something predictable like I told you not to do, what I did was is sort of do them in backwards steps, if you will. Right, so when I come down the scale here, notice I'm now jumping up. Right, see how I can slide up and slide down in either direction if I want to, and that sort of movement can really break up the monotony of the scale, right? There it is again. That's a weird one. So you got to get the idea there where I'm just sort of moving it around more at my speed where I don't have to talk and think about it. I can actually play those stupid intervals instead of messing them up. Right? So that's the sort of the goal you're trying to get to. It's not just playing these scales ascending like this. You can kind of move them. Right? And obviously that's going to be... Don't ask. Anyways, the more important part there is being able to actually sort of break the scale systems up out of the sort of one note timeless. That's good for when you want to go fast, you know, with this alternate picking stuff. Right, it's great for that stuff, but essentially when you're talking about sort of breaking out of that in more of like a legato or slash slowed down tempo. Obviously, if you just go, it gets really mechanical sounding, right? Which is why, and it gives you no opportunity to basically pause on key notes. So when I do this, if I want to get saucy, notice that little half slide there. You saw me do that lots in the video, and maybe you didn't. I do lots in the intro. Watch it again when I do the solo there. You'll see me do this. Yeah, make a little point. That's a great little jazz thing that you can incorporate to your everyday playing. The target note is this 5th fret on the B string, so I'm doing this half slide from the 4 to the 5 there. Notice the rake at the beginning too. Again, the little tiny details that are necessary. I could go whatever, but it doesn't sound as cool when you go. Again, I'm doing another rake into the slide with some vibrato. Tell me that doesn't sound badass. A great way to break down the fretboard. Notice I'm not even looking either, right? That's the ear training at work for you. And you're going to constantly be doing that until you get to this level where you don't have to look either. We don't really have to look. Instead, that gives us the time to basically focus all of our mind share on the technique. And you shouldn't be looking. Learn the systems, caged, 3 notes per string, the classical method, the minor pentatonics, right? And then look at the inversions of arpeggios and the inversions of some basic major chords and start to learn how to do that. You'll start to recognize them right away. So it's not like it's going to be very difficult for you. But, you know, start with the systems you know that you can get done quickly, like the minor pentatonic and maybe like the cage system. And that covers a whole hell of a lot of the fretboard, right? And then you can start branching out from there using all of their intervals. All the intervals I'm using come from caged. So it's basically just me using them in a linear fashion with a scale, right? Where I'm sort of... see, I was almost going to do a major there, but I changed my mind at the last second to minor. I was right. Right? So that, again, train your ear. Don't be afraid. Do not be afraid to make mistakes. You're going to make lots, even when you're good. You're going to still make a ton of mistakes because you keep reaching for the gold ring. It doesn't matter if you're at my level or if you're just getting started in the trenches. You're always reaching for the gold ring. There's another gear, another mountain to climb. I don't care what metaphor you want to use. That's the way this whole thing works. I watched an amazing musician be like, I'm 80 years old. I think I'm starting to get somewhere with this music thing. Okay, this guy was psycho. All right, so I mean, that's the attitude you got to have. And that's just it. I think most people defeat themselves with their defeatist attitude. They're like, oh, I make mistakes and whatever, it's embarrassing. And if you do it in front of your friends or your teacher or whatever it is, you're just working on your own. Negative. Make mistakes, but try to concentrate actively on being like, how do I correct those mistakes? Right? That's the most important thing. It's not just learn a bunch of intervals where you just start cycling up. Right? No, it's about trying to put some things together into a melody type idea where you're using the intervals idea with the scale idea, right? So you got this, right? The interval adds this sort of extra element. There's that arpeggio, right? Again, another element in there to sort of break up the music, and then I can go back into the scale. Right from here, I might want to go into another interval idea, so I'll send using the arpeggio, right? And then another scale, a fragment, and then now there's me using intervals in terms of a scale. See that one? It doesn't matter what the pattern is, okay? I could just put them together in a whole bunch of different ways. But the thing is see there's a big interval jump. Instead of me going... Okay, so that's using it in terms of a scale where you're just going to drop one of those notes instead of just going, or keeping it in A minor, in this case, G mixolydian, right? 3 notes per string there. Right, so when I'm using the intervals, I can get those 2 bad boys in there. Again. Notice this one. There's that third, that one, and this, what's that one? Augmented 5th, nails it, moving into the 6th, so on and so forth. I think you're starting to piece together some of the basic strokes that you should be working on, right? Some of the other ones are starting combining the bends with the intervals, right? I tried to do it. I don't know how great I did a job because sometimes you just don't hit the mark, boys and girls. That's the way it goes, okay? So look at it. And yes, do the plicking, the plucking. That's better. That's kind of interesting. When I took a chance there, I was like, I don't know what that was going to sound like, but it actually didn't sound too bad. I might use that in an actual song someday because I'm like, that's pretty weird. So again, taking chances. Sometimes they pay off. Other times, not so much. Now notice the control. Rake into the bend. Into some vibrato. Let's hear it. There's 50,000 people out there right now. All right. And even if you made that mistake, you keep going. I've seen every guitar god on the face of the planet make mistakes. I actually used to record some of these videos and I said, I'm going to stop doing that because I'm a hypocrite. I make mistakes like that all the time, but I keep making them. Now, listen, if I didn't have the mic in my face and I was concentrating more and it was music on, it might be a different story. It doesn't matter. That's my own lame little excuse. And see, I did that to point out what people do. And they're like, it doesn't matter. And they'll do little things like that to defeat themselves. Avoid that. When you're using a new technique, whether it's intervals or some other thing, you know what I mean? Obviously, the key factor, and look at, I avoided doing this. Right? Because it's too overused. Don't do stuff like that. The standard sort of interval shapes are going to be far more interesting and teach you a lot more about music. And those more outside sounds, those more abrupt intervals, right? Which is an incredibly important sort of like skill to learn when you're talking about ear training. You're not used to hearing those really harsh sounds. And so using them to your advantage actually starts to become really fun and interesting. And trust me, that is going to be way more engaging as far as the crowd is concerned. They just want to hear like a variation of stuff. So just getting into a bunch of scalar ideas is bad, which is why you need another dimension to your playing. And this interval stuff can absolutely provide that. Okay, so I'm not going to beat this to death too much. I guess to sum up is like, number one, try to choose. You can either use a backing track or whatnot, but then try to find ways to incorporate a melody around this interval idea that you want to practice. So you might start with this interesting G major, right? Maybe going down to the F sharp diminish. Then calls it sort of good enough. I'll take it for a partial win. Get out there in the trenches, make mistakes, play music, follow your heart and your dreams if that's what your thing is, but always keep in the back of your mind, you're going to be working at this now for the rest of your life. Don't try to put too much pressure or expectation on yourself. Instead, make a realistic goal, set your aim, and nail it. Thanks for hanging out, guys. On Sunday, pummeled by pentatonics. No more abstract nonsense shiatsu. We're going to get into the technical stuff because somebody was like, how do you play fast? All right. It's your funeral. See you in the next one.